Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted more guidance and direction in your life, then do we have the Whatever Arises, Love That show for you. Today I'll be speaking again with Matt Kahn. After nearly 600 episodes of Inspire Nation and counting, he is even more so one of our all-time favorite spiritual teachers and authors with one of my all-time favorite, beautiful, and transformative books out there. Truly a must-read, Whatever Arises, Love That. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about discovering your purpose, your meaning, why you're here, and the where in the world to go. That plus we'll talk about the overstimulated nervous system, psychological cocoons, embracing confusion, why in the world you want to obey the speed limit of the heart, and who's the only guest we'd ever stop loading a moving truck for. So welcome back to the show, Matt. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine.
Woohoo!
Like never before. That was amazing. That was an amazing intro.
Well, thank you. And I mean that because we have had on so many incredible guests now, but the benchmark is still yours.
Thank you.
It's still yours. So before we dive right into things, and I want to talk briefly about the book, then we're going to talk about love and then purpose and direction. What have you been up to these days?
My goodness. Well, recently, I've been engaging in a lot of exercise and getting back to being physically active. I probably dropped an additional 15 pounds and I'm just feeling spectacular in my body. I'm doing a lot of my own cooking and just cooking a lot of extremely healthy, delicious foods, getting outside a lot and just finding myself really, taking the time to really enjoy my life, as well as working really hard on my second book and really still riding high on the success and the pride of what I put into my first book. For me, when I write a book, it's really like a work of art. And I put so much into the book. And when I write a book, it has to satisfy me completely. And then to see how many lives have been touched by that book is truly remarkable. So I've just been really appreciating the effect of that book, writing my next book, which is incredible, and just really taking the time to get as physically fit as possible, and I feel absolutely incredible in my body.
Do you mind if I ask what's the next book about?
Of course. Next book is called Beyond All Barriers.
Ooh.
And when I came up with the concept of it, it really kind of made the hair stand up on my arm. The concept is that the spiritual journey is a transition from the ego to the soul. Mm-hmm. But the book is about ensuring that your transition from the ego to the soul is done from the soul's perspective. And so throughout the book, I'm highlighting every step of a spiritual journey from the ego's perspective and the soul's perspective, and really understanding the connection between the two, that the ego is not some dark force, it's not some evil enemy. It really is the soul in its most dormant state of expansion. And that as we learn to, and in the book, I literally the book, 90% of the book is brand teachings I've never offered before.
I've got to ask, what an amazing statement.
Yeah.
The ego is really a dormant state. Can you continue that?
Yeah, the ego is the soul in its most dormant state of expansion. So just like a child is an adult in training, a child is an adult as they begin and undergo their journey of maturity. Mm-hmm. The ego is the potential of the soul, but becomes the illumination of the soul as it undergoes the expansion of the spiritual journey.
So this kind of throws our whole script out the window for today, and we'll come back to it. But I'm interested in this two-step dance, this duality that's not duality, and you kind of illustrated it in an interesting way earlier. You said you're working on the book and working on your second book, and we're actually moving. Today is moving today because we're going someplace quiet because we're working on our next book.
I love that.
And so woohoo to you. And but you said that you're doing, one hand is you're taking care of everybody who needs assistance right now. On the other hand, you're working on your book. On the other hand, which actually goes hand in hand, you're working on yourself. I see it as kind of a duality, even though I talked about three things. How do you balance these pieces?
It's a great question. When you wake up, and I can just speak about my experiences, like prior to awakening, you have to be really skillful at time management. And after you wake up, what's interesting is that every moment has a flavor. It has an intuitive flavor, and you kind of have a sense of what the moment is meant for. So when I wake up in the morning, I know first thing in the morning what my body's needs are, because I'm just guided as to this is what to do first. Mm-hmm. And then spontaneously I'll get a feeling of now it's time to write for a few hours. So instead of like plotting out my schedule and blocking out time, which a lot of people do, which is very helpful, for me, my intuition just tells me what to do. And everything winds up happening in a perfect, orchestration of precision. So for me, there's just a flow. And in that flow, I get my book written. I exercise every day. I have enough time and ability to make 3 fully composed meals for myself. Mm-hmm. Still have some downtime in the evening. Still have private sessions with people on a daily basis. Have the business meetings I need to have for the decisions that need to be made. And still have time to go outside and walk around. And so really, and as a metaphor for where everyone is, whether they realize it or not, or where they're going in their awareness, is that really as we really awaken to our true potential, as we open our heart to the deepest reality within us, if we can surrender our desire for control and allow what's within us to move us forward, we actually get so much more done, and in such a harmonious way of alignment. So it really is just where everyone's going. It's a sign of the times. And we really wind up being more productive, more energized and invigorated, and less stressed and exhausted along the way.
I've got a huge grin here, because that, with interviews thrown in, is the life that we're leading right now, which is we get up, and if it feels right to write, we write. I guess I'm a plural here. There's the me and there's the observer cheering me on. And when I feel like stopping writing, I stop writing. And then we head to the gym. And then that's the we of Jessica and I. But I let this ebb and flow go. It really goes back to your whole concept of whatever arises, love that. If it's time for a long meditation, I do a long meditation. If I feel like jumping straight into the writing, which sounds sacrilege, but I'll jump straight into the writing if the lesson's right there waiting to come out. And I don't stress or strain how it's going to all fit together.
Absolutely. And, for me and in my process, I have to meet various deadlines with publishers. So I have deadlines I know that I have to meet. And I also can see like a timeline of like, okay, I'm probably going to get it done by this date. Mm-hmm. And then as I kind of set that intention, each day is ebbing and flowing as to sometimes I'll write for 4 hours a day. Sometimes I write for a half hour. Sometimes I write for 2 hours, 14 days in a row, and somehow it always gets done perfectly. So I'm just in complete trust of the process, and at the same time, the trust in the process, involves my participation. So it really is a collaborative effort between me and the universe, where I'm totally willing to do the work, and at the same time, there are days where I wake up, and I'm going through, some sort of energetic process where I just need a day to rest. I need a day just to kind of have some downtime and let my energy field go through whatever it's going through. And I give myself that permission. I don't find myself having to do that very often anymore. Mm-hmm. I used to go through it a lot. I used to go through integrations and upgrades on a daily basis. And now I find myself not necessarily having to do that so regularly. But if I need a day to rest, I certainly give myself that permission. And at the same time, I just follow whatever flow is presented to me, and it always works out.
So I wanted to talk briefly, before we go into purpose and direction, I wanted to talk about whatever arises, love that. And it seems we can use the example of you and your writing process. How do we not, it's going to sound like a double negative. Oh, well, how do we not get frustrated when we're going, oh, today I want to write. Today I feel I'm supposed to write. But today apparently is an upgrade day for me, which is interesting. It's something I've been talking about with both my coaching clients a lot lately and with guests lately, which is that oftentimes when you get into the fear and anxiety mode, it's actually something coming into you, and just to be with it. And then all of a sudden you're going to come out the other side better for it.
Absolutely. I would say that one of the biggest barriers, and again, in writing Beyond All Barriers, nice irony, but one of the barriers to spiritual evolution is this constant thought that an experience we're having isn't the way it should be.
Thank you.
Right? So let's say you wake up one day, you're excited to write, and it's upgrade day. and you get frustrated. If the ego is the one leading the way in your perception, you're going to think, I shouldn't be frustrated. What can I do to not be frustrated? Because frustration is in the way of my preferable or most preferable experience. Whereas from the perspective of whatever arises, love that, frustration is what has come up in us as a result of our change of plans in life. We wanted to write, now we're upgrading, and the change that we weren't perceiving or expecting creates a sense of frustration. So from the perspective of heart-centered consciousness, frustration only arises as the next one in line to be love. You don't love that you're frustrated. You accept that the inner child within your heart is giving you the chance to make peace with frustration and to love all the different versions of you who have ever been frustrated throughout your life, that have never been loved and held as they wanted to be unconditionally loved. So the invitation is that even when we're frustrated, and of course the instinct is, I don't want to be as frustrated as I am, can we see it as an opportunity to love the frustration in our hearts as a way of like going back in time and consoling all the versions of ourselves that were frustrated throughout all dimensions, time, and space, and being able to give the frustrated part of ourselves the love it never received, as if to update our consciousness in present moment time and to heal ourselves as never before.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
It's like the ultimate. I'm always saying the universe is working through you and for you rather than to you, and you literally you nail on the head on the nail, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah.
is that you gave meaning to it. You gave meaning to the experience.
You have to, because oftentimes what prevents people from healing and transforming, and I say this because I work with so many beautiful heart-centered beings on a daily basis, is that they are deferring meaning to a future pending moment that meets their preferences. And of course, what's happening in the journey of surrender is the things that create frustration, inconvenience, pain, and boredom are coming up and saying, we know that your greatest meaning is beyond us. But in order for you to enter that gateway beyond us, you have to give meaning to us. And that's a really, really deeper journey where who's willing to give deep meaning and to find evolutionary benefit and to find some form of benefit, tool, moment of growth when they don't feel the way they want to feel. See, that's when we know the difference, whether we are being run by our egos or guided by our souls.
It's a hard thing to do. I think it's something almost all of us are working on at some level.
Yes.
Is to move past the, I don't want to say victim mentality, but there's a certain amount of, well, we've been taught, at least in this society here in the West, the poor me, woe is me. And to be able to step past that is a giant leap of faith in a sense.
Absolutely. I think, in our societal setting, I think we've been trained to learn that we ought to deserve, we ought to be worthy of having everything we want. And of course, that's totally true. But what's the spiritual version of that statement and the deepest truth? The deepest truth is you deserve to have everything you want once you've received, appreciated, and absorbed everything you need. So first life gives us what we need, then we have what we want. And if we can go about it in that order, just as we would learn as a child, at Thanksgiving dinner, where I would tell my parents, please, I would just like a piece of pumpkin pie. And they would say, you can have the pumpkin pie when you eat your dinner. So spiritually speaking, we're just learning to appreciate our dinner, knowing the dessert is always waiting for us afterwards. And I think sometimes we try to do things a little bit out of order. And it's okay. It's just, it's how we exacerbate our suffering. And it's how we put ourselves at odds with life. And it's how we shut down versus open up. And I think what's interesting to realize is that we're not sad, we're not angry, we're not frustrated, we're not agitated, we're not stressed because of the things that happen. We're only stressed and agitated by these things, by our tendency to shut down towards them versus to open up to them. So as we learn to open up to things, even if they don't feel good, we glean the evolutionary benefit it's providing us, and we learn to make peace with reality, and we learn to recognize the light of divinity no matter what form it takes.
So I was thinking about this and thinking about attachment and how we want a certain outcome and we shut down when we don't get it. You said the most important words there. How do we recognize the divinity in each thing that's taking place?
That's right. That's right. And the most amazing thing to realize, and I'm not sure, I remember when I realized this many years ago, and it wasn't because I have never gotten what I wanted. So I'm not going to give you this insight because I've never gotten what I wanted, and I'm going to reframe it to figure out why that's a benefit. Mm-hmm. I speak to you as someone that throughout my life, I've always gotten everything I've wanted. I always get everything I want. And at the same time, the grace of getting everything I've ever wanted has never distorted or distracted me from always willing to evolve, let go, and surrender on the deepest level. But what's amazing to realize is that if you actually got everything you wanted in every moment, second by second, outcome by outcome, you'd be far less evolved and expanded as any of us are right now.
So there's so many different directions I can go with this. One, let's take the direction of comfort. And I want to understand both what you mean by you've gotten everything you want, and when I think of getting everything you want, I think of I'm comfortable. And when I'm comfortable, that's not when, in my understanding, all of the learnings take place, because there's less of a motivation to move from the couch.
Absolutely. Now, I'll tell you an interesting story about my life. If I go back to when I was a child, any toy I wanted, I got. Any Nintendo game I desired, I manifested through my parents. Right. I didn't manifest it. My parents bought it for me, right? Yeah. But as a kid, as a little soul in training, you think you're manifesting. I wanted a bike. I got a bike. I wanted a skateboard. I got a skateboard. I wanted to go to Disneyland. I went to Disneyland. I wanted to go on this trip. I went on this trip. Anything I wanted to try, any hobby I wanted to, start and never finish. My childhood is a reflection, and my life is a reflection of everything I've ever wanted. If we think of it just like as objects, I've always received. And I've received amazing graces and blessings that I never could have imagined. But here's the funny thing. Throughout my life, I got everything I wanted, and I never knew comfort until the depths of my spiritual journey. So I had everything I wanted, if you want to check it off the list of how we look at things as kids.
I'll put it in air quotes here then. Everything.
Air quotes, yeah. But I was never comfortable. And throughout my life, it was very strange that I would collect Nintendo games, and then it would just be things that collect dust. I would have a toy chest full of toys, and I'd have so many toys that to pull them out and to play with them would just give me more things to put away, and I wouldn't even do it. So what I realized when I was a child, of course you realize this as an adult, not when you're a kid, is you realize the pitfalls of object consciousness, that you can become a collector of any object. You become the collector of experiences. You can certainly become the collector of spiritual insights and be the collector of spiritual experiences. And from one spiritual high, you're chasing the next biggest high. And yet in my life, none of that made me comfortable. And I only found myself being comfortable when I was able to find myself being completely content with less. And so what I find interesting about the teachings that I offer is that, I tend to teach in a very simple way, and yet the energy and the insights are very profound, because the profound nature of it is that the deepest teachings can go in so deeply when we allow ourselves to just contemplate and receive far less. So as an adult, versus when I was a child, who I had every toy in my room, never enjoyed them. Every Nintendo game, rarely played them. As an adult, I don't live like a minimalist, but I have so little things, and each and every one of them is a treasure, and my life is of absolute comfort. And of course, what we all learned on the spiritual path is that comfort isn't based on the things we acquire. It isn't based on the experiences that we collect. Certainly isn't based on the relationships we're with, even though it's lovely to feel loved by your beloved partners, that your comfort is not based on how anything seems or appears in your reality. Your comfort is simply based on how in or out of harmony you are with reality. And the determining factor of how in harmony you are with life is dependent upon how open your heart is, which of course is why Whatever Rises love that as like a step-by-step guide to help people open their heart so they can find the comfort, they can find the harmony, they can find the alignment to be at peace with life no matter how it appears, instead of just being on a never-ending collecting spree.
Beautiful. I think I could use you here at our moving truck.
That's so funny.
We've been working on it. Oh, we've been working on it. So many directions we can go. I guess I want to go back a step, and then we're going to dive briefly into self-love and then into direction here. But before we do that, you mentioned a term many times earlier, so I want to get some understanding of this because it's something that has been a big theme again in the lives of those I've been working with. How would you define an upgrade? Because there are times where we don't realize why we're going today, and there's something actually magical in the works.
Sure. Well, an energetic upgrade, and this is my experience of it, is an experience of when my vibration is expanding, my field is opening, and welcoming in a higher frequency of consciousness. And as that happens, I can actually feel new teachings coming through, new insights. I can feel my senses being sharpened. Colors can seem brighter. But as it's happening, in my personal experience, now, my personal experience is that when I've gone through an upgrade, it felt like I'm getting a form of the flu. And I felt kind of like I'm not feeling well. And it's called Kundalini flu. It's when the Kundalini energy is rising in your body and is pushing out cellular debris that doesn't need to be there to make room for the new energy and the upgrade that's coming in. And so when I first started going through this, I would be flattened for a couple days, wrapped in a blanket, shaking. And the shaking is your nervous system recalibrating to a higher vibration of consciousness. And over the years, it's kind of sped up and accelerated where I can literally go through an upgrade now in 10 minutes versus 3 days. And, the funny thing about an upgrade is that when you're going through the upgrade, you can feel completely awful. And the minute it starts to integrate, it's fast. It's funny how fast you can go from awful to amazing.
I'm so glad you called it the Kundalini flu. I've been calling it the spiritual detox.
That's a great way of putting it. It's a great way of putting it. I mean, all these things are just pointing to the fact that it feels like you're physically ill. It could be very energetic now, and I say that I'm not assuming every time someone feels ill they're going through an upgrade, because that would just be a very limiting way of seeing it. But the difference between physical flu and Kundalini flu, or what you call spiritual detox, is that when you're going through this type of situation, there's a very precise emotional component where you feel extremely raw, vulnerable, and you need to withdraw and not be around people. So when you have that component along with not feeling physically well, that gives credence to that this might be a spiritual detox or Kundalini flu, versus when you just have the flu, it's just a very visceral level of heaviness and congestion and inflammation on so many levels.
So it's interesting because you talk about in your current book, inflammation of the ego.
Oh, yes.
When somebody is experiencing this, what's the number one thing? It might not be mama's chicken noodle soup. What are they reaching for?
Certainly is for me. That's delicious. But I think the first thing to do is when you are going through a spiritual detox, Kundalini flu, first thing is give yourself permission to have a personal day just for you. Second thing is to spend as much time as you can being still. Obviously, I teach whatever rises, love that. But before you can love yourself, you have to be with yourself. I think sometimes people go into the I love yous, and that's a wonderful thing to go into. But we must first, like if we think of our heart like a child, you have to sit with the child and let the child get to know you before it can trust and let in your love. So before we can really love what arises, we have to be with what arises. And so I think being still whether you're on the couch or lying in bed,
Mm-hmm.
whether you sleep or you're just totally awake, you're just going to just be with your breath and be as totally still and relaxed as possible. If you feel like watching a movie and just having a day of just, just relaxing and vegging, that's okay too. If you live a very overly productive life, sometimes that can be very beneficial. At the same time, sometimes, checking out with technology can be a big distraction from just sitting with yourself. So I think one of the most important things when you're going through this type of phenomena is just take the time to be totally still. You can always ask your innocence, what does it need from you to heal? How can I serve you? But I think the missing step in so many instances is before we try to love ourselves. And it happens in relationships. How many people are trying so hard to love their partners and they haven't taken the time to be with their partners? So in the same way, before we love what arises, we have to be with what arises. We have to just sit with what arises and just be still with ourselves. And when we're still, we're allowing the process that is already underway to complete itself with the utmost grace.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. When I talk with people about finding their purpose and direction, and so we're going to segue here to kind of the second half of the interview where we talk about purpose and direction, but this kind of ties in. When I talk with people about finding their purpose and direction, I tell them where they need to start is learning who they are and spending time with themselves. So this kind of segues perfectly, and maybe you can take it from there. How do we begin to discover, and if that you would say is the first step, and figuring out where to go?
Sure, I think it's a great point, and I think it's great to start people with, before you know what you're here to do, you have to know who you are. I think a lot of people, and I can speak on this because I had this experience when I was very young, as an adolescent. I did not know who I was, and I thought I'll know who I am by the things I accomplish in life. Or once I find the thing that gets people to like and validate me, then I'll know who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and so many of us fall into that pitfall. And I always use myself as an example so that everyone can just find themselves in that journey and find what's true. But in my life, I had mixed up life purpose with the popularity contest. And what I think is important in helping people find their true purpose, as you said, is start with, who are you? Now, the question is, how do you figure out who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And so just like I was saying, how when we're going through a spiritual detox, we have to just sit with ourselves and be still. The question we can ask ourselves is, who are we to ourselves without any feedback or validation from anyone? In other words, who are we when no one is looking?
That's a scary question for people.
It's a scary question. And just to give some peace to the process, if someone listening to this asks themselves, who am I when no one is looking?
Mm-hmm.
And they get this really strange, I don't know. The beauty is that I don't know who I am, not knowing who you are, is actually the first step forward of knowing who you are. Because to not know who you are based on that question means you are now stepping outside the reference points of your ego structure. You're not defining yourself as the character who is seen by this person or is validated by this person by what they do for them. So when we don't know who we are, and oftentimes when we go through spiritual awakening spontaneously, we thought we were this character in relationship with this person, having this job. And it's like you wake up and all of a sudden the script of your life gets thrown out the window and you're in an improv and you don't know who you are. And so the first step of awakening out of ego consciousness and into the heart-centered consciousness of your soul's reality oftentimes is displacing you out of your reference points or in a moment called confusion. And if we can learn that when we're confused, when we don't know who we are, the question is, can we relax our body into confusion? Our mind may not know where to go. Our mind may not know what to rest in. But if you can let your mind just spin in confusion and relax your physical body and just relax into, it's okay that I don't know who I am because now the possibilities are limitless.
I have a strange habit in coaching of congratulating people when they get confused.
I do that often.
It's such, to me, it's such a celebratory shedding.
Right.
So where do you take people when they get to this place of, I don't know about anything anymore, and you go, congratulations.
Yes.
What's their next step, or how do you guide them from there?
To sit right there with that confusion. And what happens is if you can sit with confusion just for a few moments, confusion can become serenity within a matter of seconds. And I think what often is the mentality is that people go, okay, I'm confused. He just congratulated me. I'm not sure I think this is worth congratulating. And their patterning is, okay, I'm confused. What's next? What's next is befriend confusion. Spend time with confusion. What actually does it feel like to not know who you are? And then, of course, I would bring the next question of inquiry, and of course, I just kind of come up with it spontaneously. I don't ever have it, like memorized. But in this moment, what I would come up with is, okay, who are you? First question was, who are you when no one's looking? And then if you get to, I don't know, that's obviously the confusion, displacing you out of your known reference points. The next question is, do you need to know who you are and label yourself in order to breathe? Yes or no? Do you need to know who you are and label yourself in order to blink your eyes, in order to think, in order to feel, in order to respond, in order to smell, taste, or touch? And what I help people see is that they can actually have access to every single sensory experience without needing to decide who they are or what they're not. And it gives them space from their ego structure and allows them to realize it's actually the soul that's really doing all of this. It's just the ego that insists on it's the one doing it.
It is a brilliant, brilliant question. And I'm going to come back, not as a devil's advocate, but it's so beautiful, but what a scary, scary, mind-blowing place when you realize the I is not necessary for I don't have another word for it, existence.
Right. So here's what I'll say just to deepen this. So and what you're saying is true. The I is not necessary. But let's use a little visualization. Let's use a symbol, and let's see something really interesting. So let's imagine a capital letter I.
Yeah.
Right? Most people live in the I am doing this, I am doing that. It's I. It's because of I, and all that stuff. We just talked about the I is not necessary to do all this. But if we look at a capital letter I, can we also see that it's a Roman numeral 1?
Absolutely.
So we can't actually tell the difference between when the I is the I and when the 1 is the 1. And so what if we were to look at this symbol that is both a capital letter I and a Roman numeral 1? And we would actually see, oh, it's always been a Roman numeral 1. I have just thought of it and perceived it as an I. So the reason why the I is not necessary is because it's the Roman numeral 1 who's doing everything within all moments. As if God is just wearing a Halloween costume, and the Halloween costume has been given the imagination and power to believe it's doing something. When in fact it was always the force underneath doing it all. So the 1 does everything. The I is just the way in which the 1 imagines itself.
So I wasn't trying to go there, but I guess there's no way around it. Waves and oceans.
Yes.
The I is the wave thinking it's the 1, the ocean, when it's just a part of the 1.
That's right. And yet the wave realizes itself to be the 1 as the ocean wakes up in every wave. And the wave actually can participate in the creation and the movement of the ocean, but by letting the ocean of itself move that wave along. So it is both the participation of the wave, it is both the surrender of the wave that allows the ocean, which does it all, to fully express itself through the uniqueness of the wave.
Ooh,
so in the
perfect.
same way, our personalities are surrendered to our divinity. Our personalities are given back to Source, so that Source can enter this world and express itself at full capacity through the uniqueness of our personalities. So it feels like we're doing things. It feels like we're making choices. And it's not wrong to feel like you are making choices. because that's life giving you the experience of what it's like to make a choice. But it's very surreal when you realize I'm having an experience of what it's like to make a choice, but that doesn't actually mean I'm making a choice. Kind of like if you watch a movie, I'm having the experience of Nicolas Cage and Sandra Bullock on the screen in front of me, but that doesn't mean if I go behind the screen, I can get their autograph.
So does it mean, can we get our own autograph? Does it mean we have choice? I guess let's start there.
Well, I think what's interesting, I love how this conversation is taking a very surreal direction. We could agree that we have experiences of choice. Mm-hmm. And the only place in which we have experiences of choice are in the dimension of time.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. And of course, everything is, and I can only tell you this from having direct experiences of seeing life outside of the dimension of time. And I live my life outside of time, even though I am extraordinary with my use of time. The irony is when you're outside of time, you make great use of it because you use it as a tool. But what's interesting is that when you start to see that everything happens simultaneously, that literally like the moment a being is birthed into this world, every moment of their life occurred simultaneously in different dimensions, including the death of that being. But like a movie, you're only going to see what's on the screen in that moment, kind of like you're in the movie theater. You're seeing scene number 1 of the movie. It just started. You know all the other scenes are lined up in the projector ready to kind of shoot at a certain speed and to show you a movie. It's not like the script's being written while you're in the theater. It's not like it's being directed while you're there. It's already in the can. It's already filmed. It's already done like years before. And so we all can realize, and just as a simple way of getting to this point, each of us in every moment arrive in each moment. When we arrive in each moment, we're not waiting in space for life to appear. Mm-hmm. Everything about each moment is already there. We're actually the last to arrive in every moment. Therefore, everything has actually already happened. Every choice has already been made, and yet we have the freedom to make whatever choice we are drawn to based on our level of consciousness that moment, which is ensuring the lessons we are going to learn simply to create the foundation for more expansive consciousness. And the more expanded our consciousness becomes, the greater the choices we make. And of course, the irony is we were never meant to arrive at expanded consciousness 1 second earlier than we're meant to. And we're never meant to make beautiful, empowered choices any sooner than we're meant to. So if we can actually have a balanced perspective, mm-hmm. and say, it's my responsibility to make the most conscious choices for the evolution of my soul. And at the same time, we temper that with the harmony that says, and yet, no matter how hard I try, I'm never meant to be any more evolved. And I'm never meant to make these beautiful choices any sooner than I'm meant to. And if we can let that harmony not withdraw us from participation and not allow participation to help us try to move too quickly and move too aggressively, if we can really abide in the middle of that harmony, we find reality opens up and begins to serve us.
I'm glad there's so many directions we could go with this, right? But I'm so glad that you gave permission people, flip that, gave people permission to just be in the experience, because there are so many ways that you could take this where you're actually going to flip things on their head and, strangely enough, get down on yourself through this process. One interesting piece of it is, and I've had I've had people write in about this, and they said, if this is all happening at once, if I am basically riding the roller coaster of life, taking in this experiences, then why try?
Well, let's think of the metaphor of the roller coaster. How many times have we ridden a roller coaster or seen kids or adults riding a roller coaster, and they've gotten into the seat, they've pulled down the safety bar, and they've kind of slumped over in their seat, their head dangles down, and they've closed their eyes. And their friends go, "Why are you just slumped over with your eyes closed?" And they say, "Well, the ride drives itself. I don't have any say in the matter, so why try? Every single person that rides a roller coaster sits upright, holds onto the bar, their eyes are wide open, and they are there soaking up every moment of the experience. Just because they're not steering the roller coaster doesn't mean they're not being given an exhilarating experience to have. So just in the same way that someone wouldn't be on a roller coaster and go, well, I don't drive this thing, I'm just going to close my eyes, this is pointless. If it was so pointless, we would never get in line for the roller coaster. If it was so pointless, we'd never come to the amusement park. But life is the Disneyland of higher consciousness. And so even though we are not necessarily steering this thing, we are certainly in the experience of being given the opportunity to have the most exhilarating thrill ride, depending on how often we choose to open our eyes and to let in what's being given to us. So I think from the ego's perspective, the ego has this very interesting cop-out that says, if I can't control it all, I'm just going to deny it all.
Doesn't sound like much fun.
It's not the best approach to take. Whereas the soul's perspective is, I don't need to control it all in order to enjoy it all. And that statement of I don't need to control it all in order to enjoy it all is what brings into our reality the vibration of comfort, which is what we started with.
So many directions again. I want to come back to surrender since we were almost going there. Before I do that, since we're talking about purpose and direction, why did we sign up to come to the Disneyland of higher consciousness?
If I gave you the Zen answer, I would say because we did.
And I'll clap for you with one hand.
Yeah, which thank you, which is it's a lovely clapping method. But the most loving reason why we came here. We came here because we desired this experience. We were already our divinity in heaven. We were already one with all that is. But the greatest thrill ride is for the one that is one with all that is, to know all of itself as an individual. So we came to this planet, we came to this Disneyland, we came here because the gift of individuality is among the highest commodities of experience in all of the universe. And of course, when you come here and you forget who you are as source, and you're going back through that remembrance and evolutionary process, it's easy for one of the greatest gifts in all of existence to be seen as a curse or a prison sentence. But that is just simply our trajectory of like a phoenix rising out of the ashes and ascending into the higher vibrations of our true self. And so the more we expand in our heart, the more we love what arises, the more we ground into the body, the more we're being with ourselves, the more that we are resting in I don't have to control it all in order to enjoy it all, the more we are in harmony with the universe, the more we see each moment as a gift and an opportunity, and we use those opportunities in our lifetime to become the work of art, to become the highest self, to become the master in physical form that we've always been destined to be.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to talk about becoming that work of art. Something that I've mentioned to a few of my coaching clients lately is how can you work, how can you be, how can you strive as lazily as possible?
That's funny.
So that things evolve, they unfold without you trying to force them.
Right.
What is, you're going to be writing another, you're not going to be, you are writing another book, and it is unfolding before you. How do we both determine what it is to unfold for us and to do that two-step dance, which is not to simply sit back and go, oh, the book's going to take care of itself, or or at the same time go, I'm here, I'm on this planet right now because I know I'm supposed to write a book, and then see the challenge.
I do. What I tend to do in my life is I set the highest intention for what I want the book to be, how deeply I want it to affect people's lives, and I put forth the effort to make it happen. I always have an agreement with the universe that I'm going to put out everything I want. And of course, all my intentions I'm setting is for, may this book heal, awaken, liberate all souls in the most miraculous way with every word that's read and absorbed with the energy of the book. But my agreement with the universe is, look, and I call these intentions like audibles, like what a quarterback would call in a football game, like an audible. I put out the biggest audible, the biggest intention, and I purposely try to make the biggest, greatest intention for every one of my projects and for everything I do. I try to make it so big and so powerful that it almost feels ridiculous. That's how I know I'm going in the right direction. And the agreement with the universe, as a being who has already gone through so many levels of surrender, is if there is something else that is in the highest good of all beings, if there is something that is in the highest good of my evolution, that will be the only thing that shows up. And if something else other than what I say shows up, I will be just as happy for that showing up as I am for the intention that I've set, whether what shows up matches my intention or seems to be the opposite of that intention. So I put out the biggest intention.
Yep.
I do it from the deepest space of surrender.
Yep.
I always tell the universe what I want. And of course, what I want is just for what I want for other people's lives and livelihoods. And if there's something else that is more important for me to face or other people to experience, I will receive it just as generously.
For your highest good and the highest good of all, or something better.
It's right. That's a great way of putting it. So that's how I manifest. And I tend to manifest rather incredibly. And I think it's not because I know the techniques to manifestation. When you're at a certain vibration of consciousness, any technique works. You can make up a technique and it works, but it's because of how aligned you are with yourself and how on the same page you are with reality. And of course, the difference between co-creating with the universe, collaborating with the universe versus negotiating or hiding from the universe.
So let's talk about that real briefly, and then we'll start to wind things down and jump into a meditation, because I think this co-creation or this alignment with yourself helps you find your intentions. How do we do that?
It's always important to let the universe know what you want. It's equally as important to know that what you want may not be the best thing for you. So if you cannot, so some people take one side or the other. They put out what they want, and they're trying to make everything in their life into what they want under any means necessary. And they're too aggressive, and it's too out of sync with harmony. Some people are in sync with harmony, saying life knows the greatest good for me. Life always brings me what I need, so why state what I want? And they're coming from a place of disempowerment and insecurity and inferiority. They think they're surrendered, but they're not participating unless they state what they want. So the balance of all this is I state what I want. I put out all the things that I'd want for the universe to give me, whether it's going to personally affect your livelihood, which is fine, or whether it's going to uplift the livelihood of the world, which is the intentions I set for each book I write. And the agreement is the universe always needs to know what I want. And equally so, I always want to know what's in my greatest good. And so whatever comes my way will be the response of the universe that says, we hear what you want. We're always going to give you all of the things that you desire, but we're going to give it to you in a way that assists in your evolution and helps you become the greatest version of yourself that you'll ever be. So again, always state what you want. Always accept that whatever you get in return is always the thing you need in order to evolve the most. Even if not getting what you want upsets you the most, can the upset you feel be seen as the next version of yourself that's in line to be loved as never before? And again, it takes a really surrendered soul to be able to see that kind of dance and not get into the ego swirl of, I asked for what I wanted, life didn't give it to me, there's people around me who have more than I have and they don't deserve it, that's unfair. We go into victimhood. Versus what surrender is about is, yes, it's important for me to know what I want and even to ask for what I want. And yet what I receive in return is perhaps more important and more beneficial for my growth, whether it matches my desires or not. And again, most people can't jump there. It's the heart-centered path and loving what arises that prepares you to live at that consciousness. So I'm not saying this as if people should jump to that place. I'm saying that as that's the mentality we aspire towards, and it's loving what arises, which is the path of heart-centered consciousness in my book, Whatever Arises, Love That, that takes people through the process to actually access that kind of mentality and consciousness.
It's so cool. And thank you for sharing all that. One really cool thing that came to me, I guess it came out of awareness. I don't know why I'm picturing whapping a fork and going, I want this. It's vibrating over here. And you actually get something far away that's vibrating. That's what you get. That's completely different. And if you just have awareness, oh, wait, that's guidance from the universe. That's the or something better. And then you whap it again, you have your intention, and you find that because you were so far away the other time, you had moved toward that other thing. Over time of practices, you start to merge and get to that place where what you want is in harmony with what's for your greatest good.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. When you're an ego, everything you want is opposite of the harmony the universe wants for you. When you are aligned with your soul, you're only capable of wanting the things that are only meant to be. And
so that practice, if you can step back from it, which is whatever arises, which is everything that you're teaching, then you can see that the very act of I asked and I got something completely different, that's awesome. And that helps strengthen the muscle of faith, of guidance, of purpose, of direction, of the whole works while bringing you into divine alignment.
Absolutely. And the irony, I won't say hilarity because it's not funny until it's funny. I mean, when it's funny for all of us, we can sit back and laugh at the cosmic joke.
I'll pause you for a brief sec. Michael J. Fox, there's a great article in AARP recently, and he was talking about how trying to get a cup of coffee over to his wife, and he spills the whole damn cup on the way over, and just laughs at the hilarity of him even trying to take the cup of coffee over. But in the humor is the joy of life, in the spilling of the coffee.
That's right. It's amazing. And you know what a great role model he is, just being so public about what he's going through. I mean, I love him dearly. And it's totally true. You know, we have the best of intentions of what we're trying to, we're going to move the cup of coffee over to here and give it to someone, and maybe the coffee is meant to be on the floor instead of in someone's experience. But, when you are rooted in ego, everything you want is exactly what's not meant to show up, or you want all the things you're meant to have at exactly the moment it's not meant to be revealed, which is why you feel like the universe doesn't listen to you. When you're rooted in the soul, everything you want is in alignment with everything you're meant to have, and you only want it the moment it shows up, and then that makes you feel like you're manifesting at a high level. And it is manifesting at a high level, but it's not really manifesting. It's really alignment with consciousness. And of course, how do we align with consciousness? By opening our heart. How do we open our heart? By feeling safe in our body. How do we feel safe in our body? But by allowing our innocence of heart to be loved and cherished as no one has ever loved us. And how do we do that? By sitting and being with ourselves and developing a relationship with ourselves, just like we want others to be with us.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Importance of self-love.
Yes, self-love is everything. And, no matter whether you want to experience the healing of your physical body, the transformation of your reality, co-create with the universe, manifest at high levels, help the earth ascend, manifest your soulmate, or awaken your consciousness into enlightenment, Buddhahood, and beyond. None of these things can actually occur and anchor within you unless we are rooted in the heart-centered consciousness of self-love. And even if we know a spiritual truth that's beyond the material world and the personal self, the irony is the less rooted you are in the personal self and the material world, the more loving of others and forgiving of yourself you'll tend to be. So the irony is, the less I that is there, the more the one in you loves itself as never before. And the more we are lost in the personality of I, the more we expect other people to treat us the way we don't treat ourselves. So there's so many ironies to all of this, but it all comes down to loving our hearts is the single greatest important thing to evolving our consciousness to our highest capacity.
Thank you. A few quick wrap-up questions. We'll jump into a meditation. First off, I've been really enjoying throwing on my coaching hat and giving everybody homework before I let them go from listening to each show. So what one homework assignment would you give people today to help them on their journey?